Welcome to the Statistic in ED YouTube channel. This is another video from the series What Can Go Wrong in R, where contrary to the other tutorials, things are not always as bright as they should be. We do get error messages in R and in other programming languages. So let's see what we can do about them. Today it's about object of type closure is not subsettable. I think this is a typical error message that has troubled a lot of people and not only beginners. It's not very clear to understand. So when you're writing R code, you might run into this error message. It gives you your expression for the dots error in and your expression object of type closure is not subsettable. So we'll see, we'll answer two questions. Firstly, how can this error arise? And we'll see two ways. So firstly, the error can come about when we accidentally use square brackets instead of parentheses. And secondly, we can trigger this error when we accidentally access a non-existing object, and this object happens to be a function. So we'll see examples of both of these and how to solve that so that you shouldn't scratch your head anymore after watching this video. Secondly, another question that we want to answer is what the heck is a closure that is mentioned in this error message? So let's dive right in. For the first case, accidentally using square brackets instead of parentheses, I think this is pretty straightforward. So we see a couple of examples on the left-hand side on the slide. I assign a vector x with the values 1 to 5, and I call the mean function and the summary function, but both times I use square brackets instead of parentheses, and I get this error message. Object of type closure is not subsettable. It doesn't only happen when I use my own objects like x that I defined previously in the code. It also happens, for example, when I use the empty cars dataset that is built into R and is used in many examples. So when I call the head function, but again using parentheses, square brackets instead of parentheses, I get the same error message. Object of type closure is not subsettable. So in this case, the solution is very simple. We just exchange the square brackets for parentheses, and then the code works like a charm. So you see on the right hand side, the mean function works, the summary function works, and the head function works as well. So that's simple, but there's a second way of triggering this error message. So let's look at that. We get the same error also when we accidentally access a non-existing object, which happens to be a function. So we see on the left-hand side how we can trigger the error again. I'm using the empty cars dataset, but I assign it to my own dataset called data. It doesn't have to be an assignment. I could have loaded the data from somewhere or created it for a simulation. It doesn't matter where the data came about. We just have a data set now that is called data. I can subset that in base R using the square bracket notation, row 1 and columns 1 to 3, and it works like a charm, and I get this result back that you see here. And now further down in my code, I want to refer to the data set again, but now accidentally I think I called my data df for data frame, which is not true. It's called data. So I'm using df instead, and I get the error message that this video is about. Object of type closure is not subsettable. And I think in this case, the error message is not really helpful. For comparison, we can make the same mistake using an object that doesn't exist, but this time I'm not using df, but my underscore df, which should be short for my data frame. I'm using the same indices, so row 1, columns 1 to 3, but now I get a different error message. The error message is now object my df not found. So arguably, this second error message is much more helpful. Of course, I didn't define my df, but data. So I think the second error message helps me more here, but using df instead of my df, we get this strange error, object of type closure is not subsettable. So the solution here is very simple. We exchange the wrong object name df or my df for data again, and then it will work again like we see on the left hand side at the top. So the solution is easy, but we want to understand more why df behaves differently to my df. So what is the difference? We can query this object df on the right hand side. So I look at the class attribute and it's a function, and the type of gives me the internal storage mode, and it's a closure. So that brings us closer to this error message. Object of type closure is not subsettable. I can also look at the documentation of df. That's the third command I ran on the right hand side, the yellow code highlighted, question mark df, and it gives me the help page for df, and you see df stands for density function. So there are a couple of functions that deal with the f distribution, and df is a function indeed. So that's why df behaves differently to my df. So hopefully this made a little bit clearer this second way of triggering this error message, but we still haven't really answered the question what a closure actually is. So that remains to be seen. So what is a closure anyway? Let's consider a piece of code here on the left-hand side, and you can pause the video if you want to think about what it does. So I'm assigning the value 3 to a vector a, and then I define a function that increments a by 1. So simply enough, the function f does not take any arguments. You can just call it. So what we do then is we print out a. The first time we print out a, it should have the value 3, right? Because we didn't call the function yet. Then we do call the function, and then we print out a again. And if you want to think about what happens, you can pause the video now. So let's run this code, and I don't know if you're surprised. For both times we print out a, the value is 3. The function call f in the middle does not change the value of a in the global environment. And again, we can check the class attribute and the internal storage mode using the type of function. And like before with df, f is a function and the internal storage mode is closure. So we see here that functions enclose their environment. So the a inside the function is not the same as the object a in our global environment. A inside the function can access the global environment. It can read the value 3, but it doesn't change the object in the global environment. It creates a copy of a that lives inside the function in a protected environment. If that was not the case, we would have a lot of conflicts between objects that live in functions or in packages and objects in our global environment. But this is not the case. There are protected environments for packages called namespaces, and functions have their own environments, and that's why functions are called closures. So I hope this helped a little bit. Lastly, we'll see how we can increment a by 1 using this function f without rewriting f, but applying it a little bit differently. We do that on the left-hand side at the bottom of the slide. I print out a again, and then I assign a to the result of a function called f, and then I print out a again. So here you can think a moment about what this code does and why it's different to before. I make an assignment to a, and f indeed returns a incremented by 1. So when I reassign that, then when I print out a the second time, it has the value 4. So I hope this helped you in understanding what a closure is. So that was basically it for today. If you want to find out more about closures and environments, I recommend Hadley Wickham's Advanced R book that you can buy, but you can also read it online for free. Hadley Wickham Advanced R, you'll easily find it. And if you want to know more about debugging and dealing with error messages and the right mindset to approach that, I can highly recommend a talk by Jenny Bryan, who works for our studio. And the talk has the exact title of this error message in this video today. Object of type closure is not subsettable. This talk is much broader than my video today. It's not only about this specific error, but about the whole mindset of debugging and dealing with errors in R. So you'll find that on YouTube, I think, and on RStudio's resources. Jenny Bryan, object of type closure, not subsettable. Right, I hope you found that helpful. All the best for your own projects. Don't get frustrated with R's error messages. Have fun, enjoy. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. All the best. See you next time. Ciao.